Hello, I'm Ben, and you're watching The PhD Parent. So it's well established that picky eaters eat less vegetables than non-picky eaters. Now, eating vegetables can support healthy growth and development, so this can be potentially a problem. As far as I can tell, few interventions have been developed to improve the eating habits of kids who are picky eaters. However, plenty of research has been conducted to get kids in general to eat better, with this research mainly focused on improving vegetable consumption. And this is because most kids don't eat enough veggies. Across the years, this research has been summarized as several reviews. In fact, there have been so many reviews that Bell conducted a review of the reviews. So in this video, I'll provide a summary of research investigating a relatively well-supported intervention for increasing vegetable consumption that involves providing kids with a variety of vegetables. In another video, I discuss another well-supported intervention called repeated exposure. And I also have a video in which I discuss what not to do to try and get kids to eat more veggies. But first, I'll provide an overview of the review of the reviews. So the studies considered by Bell were those that tested the effectiveness of an intervention intended to either increase the amount of veggies that kids ate and/or the degree to which kids like veggies, which presumably would result in them eating more veggies. And Bell restricted their focus to studies in which kids were 5 years old or younger. Thus, strictly speaking, the findings of this research are only applicable to kids in this age range. The interventions considered by Bell were extensive, and they included exposure to flavors when the baby is in the womb, exposure to flavors via breast milk, providing kids with a variety of veggies, how texture is introduced, giving kids the opportunity to choose which veggies to eat, starting meals with vegetables, repeated exposure to veggies, pairing vegetables with a pleasant or familiar flavor, pairing vegetables with a food or ingredient that is energy dense, such as oil, providing a non-food reward for eating vegetables, parental modeling, and using picture books depicting vegetable eating. So Bell rated each intervention approach according to the strength of the evidence. And they used 3 different rating categories: promising, emerging, and limited. As you can see, the strongest category of evidence was only promising, which suggests that there is still quite a way to go in terms of determining the most effective way of significantly improving vegetable intake in kids. Bell rated 2 interventions as promising, providing kids with a variety of vegetables and repeated exposure. Now, to get this rating, the intervention had to have a large body of evidence with consistent findings where the individual studies were at least of moderate quality. The remaining interventions were almost all rated as emerging, that is, small to large body of evidence with mixed findings and mixed quality of studies. Now, at some point, I'll probably review these other approaches, but for the moment, in the present video, I'm going to discuss research investigating the impact of providing kids with a variety of vegetables on vegetable consumption. Now, as mentioned, evidence showing the impact of repeated exposure on vegetable consumption is reviewed in a different video. So there have been 2 ways researchers have investigated whether providing kids with a variety of veggies leads to improvements in consumption of new vegetables. One has been an observational approach, where the naturally occurring association between variety of vegetables provided and vegetable intake has been investigated. The other approach has been an intervention one, and that's where one group of kids is introduced to a variety of vegetables and one or more group of kids is not. And the impact of intake on new vegetables or other foods is then assessed. And in the following, the results from each line of research will be discussed. So first of all, a single observational study has been carried out to examine the association between variety of vegetables provided and vegetable intake. Specifically, Milan looked at the association between the number of vegetables and fruit a kid had tried by the time they were 14 months old and food intake and picky eating about 2.5 years later, in a sample of about 340 kids. The results showed that a greater variety of vegetable and fruit eaten at 14 months was associated with higher levels of vegetable and fruit intake 2.5 years later, and lower levels of picky eating. And while this finding suggests that providing kids with a variety of veggies is a good thing, because the study was only looking at the association or correlation between variety and vegetable consumption, you can't conclude that providing kids with a variety of vegetables causes positive changes in their vegetable consumption. But you can draw stronger causal conclusions if you manipulate the amount of variety of vegetables that kids are offered. And that's what's been done in intervention studies. Now, if you want to know more about correlation versus causation, you can check out my video in the link below. So first of all, Garish and Manella recruited 48 mums and their infants. And the infants were around 4.5 years old and were starting to transition to solid foods. Mums and infants were assigned to one of 3 feeding groups. In one group, the only solid food given to the infants was pureed carrots. In another group, it was only pureed potatoes. And in the remaining group, infants were fed a variety of pureed vegetables. except for carrot. Now, this feeding regime was maintained for 9 days. And the outcomes the researchers were interested in was intake of carrots and chicken. So the results showed that infants in the carrot-only group and in the variety group both ate more carrots than infants in the potato-only group. And further, the variety group ate more chicken than both infants in the carrot-only and potato-only groups. So when you dig into it, only the former effect came out statistically. So these results are consistent with the idea that variety can produce benefits in terms of increased intake of novel foods. Now, similar findings were reported by Mayer, but there were 2 important differences in this latter study. First of all, the researchers compared 2 variety conditions. Specifically, in each condition, there were 3 different vegetables: artichoke, green beans, and pumpkin. However, in one condition, infants were fed one of the vegetables for 3 days in a row before switching to the next one. So for example, days 1 to 3, they might have had artichoke, days 4 to 6, green beans, and then days 7 to 9, pumpkin. In the other condition, infants were fed a different vegetable on a daily rotation. So for example, day 1 artichoke, day 2 green beans, day 3 pumpkin, and then repeat. The second difference in this study was that the researchers investigated the impact of whether kids were breastfed versus formula fed. Now, Mayer found that giving infants a variety of vegetables led to greater intake of novel foods relative to a no variety condition, but only when this variety involved infants being fed a different vegetable each day, and only for infants who were breastfed. In a follow-up study, it appeared that these effects were still evident by the time kids were 6 years old. Similar findings have been reported by Manella, who found that providing a variety of vegetables in each meal and varying the vegetables provided from one day to the next produced the best results in terms of the amount of novel food eaten. So it looks like providing a variety of vegetables is helpful, but things are a little complicated. And to complicate things even further, Coulthard found that a variety condition led to a greater intake of novel vegetable compared to a no variety condition. However, this effect was only evident for infants who had begun eating solid food before 6 months of age. Thus, across these studies, the results are consistent with the idea that providing a variety of foods can result in kids being more likely to consume novel foods. However, the picture is definitely not straightforward, in that such benefit may depend upon when this variety is introduced, the way in which variety is provided, and whether a kid is breastfed. Nothing simple. So that's it for the impact of providing kids with a variety of vegetables on vegetable consumption. If there's anything I've gotten wrong, any important research I've overlooked, or if you have any questions, then feel free to get in touch. Otherwise, happy parenting.